Hello everyone. I thought I'd show a few of the tips that I use in Lightroom. Had a lot of people asking me about some of the tips that I use and tricks and how I do things, and some of this may be elementary for those who've been doing it for a long time, but may be helpful for those who are just starting. So hold on here a second and we'll get started. Okay, we're back in Lightroom, and the first thing I'd like to do is show kind of the crop and alignment. And I haven't done anything to this photo yet, but if you go to the crop tool, there's several different ways you can align and get this photo kind of straightened out. One of them is using the angle tool, and you can simply find an edge that's supposed to be level, click on it and drag and let go, and it straightens your photo out. And you can see here that it's pretty well straightened here with the ground. And that's kind of one way to do it. Now another little trick is if you have this photo and you say, you know, this is the original crop, which is 2:3 with my camera. Most cameras are, unless you have a crop or have your crop set different. Let's say you want to make this a vertical instead of horizontal. Well, you simply hit the X key. When you hit the X key, you're still level, but you have vertical shot instead of horizontal. You can change back with the X. Then you can always change it to maybe a 4:5, which is 8:10. When you're done with that, you can then just hit close, and there you go. Then we can start working on the photo. But I'll go back and reset that. That was just a couple of tricks: how to level, how to change by hitting the X key. We're gonna go down here and right click and go to solo mode. Now when I click the basic, it closed the tone curve, and vice versa. So that's just a little trick there. Okay, now the white balance tool. A lot of people don't know about this. A couple of things about the white balance tool. When you click on this tool, you get a loop here. This shows you, apparently you're supposed to be able to look at the numbers here and try to get them close together, and that's kind of like a correct white balance. But if you don't want to see that, just uncheck right down here in the bottom, uncheck show loop. And another thing, if you click on what you think might be a white area to get a white balance, your loop docks. Well, you can uncheck that too. So let's click on it and go down here to auto dismiss and uncheck that. So now when you click on one, it will not go back and dock. You'll have to physically dock it back up. So that's another little tip, and using an area that's white will get you a little bit closer to your white balance. If you want to reset that, just go back to as shot up here. You can also use your presets, and auto now works really well in Lightroom. I use auto a lot, or cloudy maybe. You get different looks, daylight. One other thing you can do is if you do click on your color picker, up here you have a navigator preview right up here. You can move it around in your photo and find different things, and when you find what you think is the right color, click on it, and it shows you right up here kind of like a preview of what your white balance is going to be when you click on it. Try auto. Auto really works well sometimes. They got a pretty good result right there. And if that's not what you really wanted to do, there's a couple of ways to reset that. One is to hold down Alt or Option on a Mac and hit Reset Tone. That resets it back. The other way might be just hit Control Z. That'll take you back. That's an undo tool, Control Z. So one of the other ways you can individually, if you get the exposure too bright, you want to bring it back to 0, instead of trying to run it back to 0, you can just double click and it brings it back to 0. You can even punch in the number that you would like for this to be. If you wanted one stop over, Control Z to back that up, or -1 stop, so that you can actually type in the number that you need. Clarity I use a little bit usually to make it pop a little more. That's your mid-tone contrast. Then another thing, if you want to change settings with your gradient tool, I love to use the gradient tool. One thing you can do is either come from the top down or the bottom up. So maybe if this is a little too bright or dark in here, if you hold the shift button down, bring it up, it keeps it level for you. Then you can do maybe less exposure or maybe more clarity, maybe a little bit less saturation. If you hold the shift button down, if you hold the alt button down and drag this slider across your point right here, it'll actually move all your sliders. If you look over to the right in the brush tool, it's moving the sliders back to 0 or back up higher so you can do more. So we'll go back and reset that tool. If you go down to the bottom, you can reset it, and we'll close that back out now. And come down here to the HSL slider. A lot of times I do photos in the fall and I have these colors, or you may have too much green, whatever you want to change. The hue button up here, you have saturation, luminance, and hue for your colors. This little picker right here, adjustment, if you click on that, you can go find a color like this red right here and click on it, and right where that little plus sign is above my target tool right here is where it's going to sample. You can drag up or down to change the hue. That actually changes the hue of that color. And then you can move over here and change the hue maybe of the yellows. You might want to make them a little different, maybe more orange, give it a little bit more color. And then you can also do the same thing with saturation. You can pick this little tool, and let's say we go down here to the greens and it's just a little too saturated, so we can bring that down. Of course, it's going to do the whole screen when you do that. Now the details slider, exclamation mark, and it zooms in for you. Now one thing that I like to do is I kind of know where I want to get my noise on most photos, especially night photos, but if you hit the I key on your keyboard, it brings up, toggles through the number of the photo number, the date, how big it is, the time. That can be important if you're doing time lapses and stuff. Hit the I again, it gives you, okay, we're at 1/800th of a second, ISO 400 at 54 millimeters. It tells you the lens. So I know that that's at 400. I'm probably going to need a little bit of noise reduction. I can see some noise in here, so I'm going to bring it up. It's going to start softening your photo. Then come up and sharpen it a little bit, but you don't want to sharpen the sky and things like that, so I'm going to bring it back down. Well, I don't have any sky in here, but you can mask this, especially if you have a sky, by holding the Alt or Option button down, bringing this over, and this masks out what you've just sharpened. So now we have, if you zoom into 100%, we have gotten rid of a lot of noise, plus we've sharpened the photo some. So that's another trick on sharpening and noise reduction. I'm going to zoom in on this photo, and if you hold the space bar down, you can click and drag. Now what I want to do is I would like to darken this a little bit. Auto mask. That will keep, as long as this plus sign that you see in my tool here stays inside this square range here, we will not go outside of it. So it will look at these colors and keep it inside here. So what we might want to do is darken it a little bit. So I'm going to bring exposure down. What you can do is, by keeping it inside here, I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. You can click one time here, then you can come to the other end and hold the shift button down and click again, and it brings it. This works on something that's straight line, brings it straight across. So that's just a few tips I wanted to show that are just tricks in Lightroom that I like to use. That's not all of them, it's just a few that I use a lot. And I appreciate everybody watching. If you would, and like this, if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this, it would help me. I'm trying to build up my YouTube.